Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Suzanne McNinch and Chez Filippini.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. It's a great joy to be here with you today, and my guest, Dr. Christopher Gawel, the Director of Liturgy and Sacramental Practice for our diocese, a return guest. Welcome back, Dr. Gawel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't caught it yet, guys, you saw Suzanne's wonderful face last time around. I was out of town. We were switching places. She's not able to be here today. Summer is a crazy time of year to coordinate anything, especially people being in the office at the same time. So we're doing what we can, but our last episode was, again, the teaching by Bishop Wack on the new encyclical from Pope Leo XIV, Magnifica Humanitas, on especially, not exclusively, especially the issue of AI in the modern world. So we've had two episodes on that, one with Dr. Neil and I and a guest of ours, and then also on Bishop Wack. So please, if you're wrestling with this issue, this topic, if you hear people talking about it at the water cooler or in your home or something like that, these episodes are great windows into this great document. But nothing beats the real thing. Vatican.va. Go read that thing, guys. Well, speaking of technology, we're here in the studio, this beautiful studio. Thank you, Lord, for giving us this. Dr. Gawel, it's been a year, man.
I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary for coming to the diocese.
Regrets? No?
No.
Not at all.
Actually, I've been reflecting, and between weather and just location, no, I cherish Michigan, but I'm not missing it.
Fair enough. Spoken like a true northern transplant, such as myself. Yeah. My first year, I remember we moved down in 1996, my parents and I from Pennsylvania. The first year, it didn't feel like home, you know. But then by like the second, like midway through the second year, it's like, okay. Yeah. And then you're just like, man, this place is awesome.
You know when it felt like home? When I returned, I went to Michigan for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I came back and it was hot, warm, beautiful weather. And I had just missed a huge snowstorm. My mom actually complained. It was the largest snowstorm they ever had. 54 inches of snow fell over the course of like 3 days. And I just said, thank you, Lord. I am not having to be any part of that.
I would really love to see my parents made the decision to leave after 36 inches of snow in the winter of 1996 up in Pennsylvania. It's like there's got to be a ratio of like per inch of snowfall over 2 feet equals like 10,000 people leave your state or something like that.
I don't know any of those statistics, but my mother has said she had never seen that much snow.
Yeah, crazy.
And then, you know, it was one thing when we were younger and she had children at home and my dad was still alive, could help her, but she's home alone.
Yeah. Wow.
And 3-4 days without any sense of snow plows, people, you know, the county plowing out the county roads, that sort of thing. So it was a little bit, I told Mom, I'm like, you can come down here and visit. She was a little reluctant, but yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we'll skip the pleasure. You know, we usually have our Gaudium et Spes one quote on joys, hopes, griefs, anxieties. We want to get to the main point. It's been a year since you've been here. We're talking today specifically about a major initiative that was that you took on yourself, that was encouraged by our bishop, which was to really look at the state of, especially of extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, how that is implemented in our diocese, how it varies from parish to parish. And you've completed the guidelines and also an online course, which will be part and parcel of our education for folks preparing for this ministry going forward. So, but a fruit of this, it comes out of this fact that you've had the unique experience. You've been to every single parish and mission.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I got hired and, you know, in typical job market type of thing, what are your goals? What are you going to set out to achieve? And one of the things that I learned in ministry was you really can't set out goals and just say, hey, God bless these things that I'm about to conduct or complete. So I wanted to spend considerable amount of time of getting a pulse of the diocese. What is going on? And since my role with liturgy, what's going on liturgically? So I just made it a goal to visit every single parish in the diocese. It took me short of 52 weeks to do it.
Not bad.
I mean, it was about a week ago I finally visited the last one. But it was just to get a lay of the land. Now, what's interesting is early on, people didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
so I could slip in, just get an experience, attend Mass, and reflect on what I experienced. But getting towards the end, now that I've been a little bit more public, the priests have gotten to know me. It's more like, why are you here? What did I do wrong?
And why are you holding that clipboard and checklist?
There was no clipboard. There was no checklist. The only checklist I had was marking off each parish. In fact, one of the parishes, their air conditioner broke down right before Mass. It was a Saturday vigil Mass. And they moved everybody into the social hall. And I mean, Father was scrambling to put the pieces together. So, I mean, we had the round tables with the chairs, and it was just, and he was a little embarrassed by that I had showed up that day, but I just said, you did great, Father. I mean, you did what you had to do. I mean, it was 84 degrees in the church, but the social hall was air conditioned. So he made the right choice and just did the best that he could with that, with that moment. So, it's very interesting what you can experience.
For sure. And obviously when you first came out, then you've also been installed as an acolyte. So you're sometimes obviously accompanying the bishop for major liturgies on the altar and stuff. What's the vantage point you've seen so far, both from the sanctuary and from the pews, as far as just general memories that stick out, favorite moments, anything?
Oh, yeah. So the one thing that I can say in this diocese is there is a level of consistency. There is I wasn't policing anything, and my point was not to police, but there wasn't anything that I had to go, hey, Bishop, we got to talk about, Saint Cunegunda or whatever. I'm trying to come up with a parish name that's not in the diocese, but there was nothing really to that I had to report on or anything like that. So this great, the priests are very dedicated. The parishes are very devoted to the Eucharist. Mass is the Mass, and it was great to experience that. And then I would say the other is the variety. What I find very interesting, coming from the north, we still have more of the ethnic parishes. And here you have that variety within one parish. So you might have one parish that they go on a Sunday, they go from English speaking Mass to a Spanish speaking Mass, or we have Vietnamese communities, we have Korean communities here. So I did miss my Polish, I will say. I missed the Polish parishes, but my parents are from Poland. I grew up speaking Polish, so no Polish parishes here. And I did discover there is an Eastern market, or Eastern European market here in Pensacola. One of the priests actually, it's over by the mall.
Okay.
Here in Pensacola. Yeah. It's a little.
Any kind of Christmas market is welcome. I mean, especially the Central and Eastern European ones are amazing.
Yeah. So got my Polish sausage and bread and made żurek. If you know what that is, it's a Polish soup. But yeah, so very interesting. And the other thing too, now what Pensacola reminds me of, I was in Detroit for 24 years. But it reminds me of growing up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, because there are some parishes that are so far away from everybody else that driving out there, like, where am I in this panhandle? And but then you come across, and there's this little enclave of a village, and the church is there in the center of it. So those were some really neat experiences of going to these kind of far off places. And Apalachicola is the one. I will say that church.
So tell us about this. By the way, this is tied for our third oldest parish in the whole diocese. We have St. Michael the Archangel Basilica here in Pensacola, 1781, and then we have Blessed Sacrament's. It wasn't called Blessed Sacrament back then, but that church draws its foundations 1845. But Apalachicola and St. John here in Pensacola, both founded in 1851. It's a particularly unique little architecture church. It's
Spanish missionary style.
Yeah, tell us.
And what I loved about it was they kept pretty much all of the architecture. Father was talking about a new crucifix being installed.
Father Roger,
yes, doing a great job leading that community. And here's the other interesting thing about some of the parish communities is how much they depend on travelers, on visitors. So he announced there's only about 70 or 80 families in this parish. And so, but the church was full a couple hundred people. They had confirmation there. I was there with the bishop for confirmation, and then he went around and asked what state people were from. And that weekend, Kentucky seemed to win. There was a lot of people from Kentucky. So
that's funny.
But one of the things that I did appreciate is they were kind of decluttering their sanctuary a little bit. So one of the things that they did was they put in kind of the stand for the musicians that kind of hid all of the cords, the microphones, and it was a really nice, clean look.
Good.
That
nice.
Wasn't a distraction, when you're looking towards the sanctuary. So that was a very interesting and neat little concept that parishioners, one of the parishioners was a woodworker who put this kind of stand together.
A fascinating, a cool town too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I stayed overnight there in a little hotel near the beach, so I was able to get some beach time in the evening. It was wonderful. Yeah. I do have to say though, I'm at a disadvantage. I'm allergic to fish and seafood.
Oh, no.
It's a lot of fish and seafood places that I just cannot enjoy. So, yeah.
One of the cool, when Derek Diamond and I were putting together a documentary, Derek found on the Florida archives, they have a huge amount of video material that has been given over to the archives and that they've made publicly available. You can just download it, and you don't even need an account or anything like that. One of the great scenes from the opening part of the 10 minutes is the emergence of Apalachicola as one of the primary Gulf, on the whole Gulf. It was like a trading point because it gives up into the Apalachicola River, which goes up into Georgia and Alabama. And it's a great moment. I don't know when it was from, maybe the 30s or 40s, maybe 50s or something like that. A boat getting launched out to presumably go seafood fishing. And the priest is at the edge of the dock. I don't know which one. There's a priest of the Mobile Diocese at that point in time, blessing it as it went out. So, yeah, a lovely fishing town, a lovely, a great, it was once an industrial hub. So, okay. Well, that's great. Congratulations. I don't know how many miles you put on the car. Or
well, it was diocesan vehicles.
Yeah.
So
thank goodness that your Catholic sharing appeal dollars at work. Thank you, everyone.
Because my car is not in a position to be able to go about. Anyway, I keep asking people to steal my car, or if they're going to hit it, just total it. So. Yeah. I think the word is jalopy.
A good old faithful jalopy, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many, without a state vehicle inspection, you see a lot of those around in Florida. We wanted to talk specifically about, this document that was released out to the diocese just recently, Guidelines for Extraordinary Ministers of Holy Communion, Communion of the Sick, Eucharistic Adoration, and Sundays in the Absence of a Priest. So, this, as you write in the first line here, the Holy Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. There are many liturgical rites. They all have this gravitational pull back toward the Mass at the center here. And of course, for most people, when you talk to the average Catholic over their lifespan, I feel like a lot of my life, you talk to somebody like, why do you love being Catholic? Well, I love going to Mass. I love receiving Holy Communion. For folks who haven't been to church in a while, they come back and they're like, oh, a lot of time I miss Holy Communion. It's so obviously in front of our faces here, but the mechanism, the way in which it is given to the people, the way Christ distributes it, it comes through ministers. So tell us about this role of an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion. So
we have to be careful with the word extraordinary.
Okay.
Because it doesn't mean above the ordinary or better than.
Yep.
Extraordinary means out of the ordinary. The ordinary minister of the Eucharist is the priest. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the guidelines, when the new translation of the Roman Missal came out in 2011, there was a re-emphasis on the priest as the Eucharistic minister, the one who is offering the sacrifice and then distributing Christ's body and blood to us. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the text, when you look at the Roman Missal, you begin seeing a lot of these coming. A lot of the language coming forward. And so language is so important. That's number one, is because, the church has spent a considerable amount of effort, energy, time on identifying even particular words. The one I always refer to is Council of Nicaea and homoousios, Jesus being of the same substance of the Father,
Not a similar, the same.
The same, correct. And so I'm very particular about what language we use. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you an example from my previous experience. I was in a parish and they would refer to, will you take a station for bread or for wine? Uh-huh. And I hesitated because I said, no, at that point in the Mass, it's not bread or wine. It's appearance of bread and wine, but it's the body and blood of Christ. So we need to use proper language. And with the Eucharistic revival and the Eucharistic Congress, and just looking back at the translation of the Roman Missal, and then some of the clarifications that are coming from Rome, they come very often. Most of the lay people don't ever see them. Yep. Those of us that are ministry nerds do see them. Yeah. That it was very clear that there are some things that we needed to clarify, and particular roles. What can the laity do, and what can the laity, or what I should say is what is reserved for the clergy.
That's right.
And so, I'm always, whatever the laity can do, should.
Okay.
So if a layperson can distribute communion to people, then they should.
Yep.
That we should not deny, because and Pope Francis gave us a lot of what has emerged because of our baptismal grace.
Yep.
So I was just looking kind of, and what was interesting was, as I was visiting parishes, I was then also being contacted by parishes and saying, could you clarify this for us? Yeah. What about the, and so this was when it came to these guidelines for communion ministry, it was kind of a what I was experiencing, but then what other people came forward and was affirming for me that we need some clarification in these things. Yep. And so when I look back, I said the last time we had any guidelines on extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion was in 2015. So we're 11 years later. We've also had a pandemic since, so there's a few changes from there that, and what we've learned in that for best practice, but then just also kind of a return to what has the church, what is the church's expectations for us when it comes to the distribution of Jesus' body blood.
Yeah. Can you spend two things I want to spend time on? First, the baptismal grace, or second, baptism. What, for a lot of people who have been Catholic their whole lives, COVID was the most. And so many, it's beating a dead horse. Everybody's COVID was a moment for every specter of life. But the experience of the Mass, and especially the reception of the two species, the body and blood of Christ, is probably the thing that people would remember the most. So what did we learn? What do you remember from that?
So I was working during COVID in a parish, and I was deemed essential. Some of my coworkers were... they were taking care of elderly parents. Yep. They had the health issues that could mitigate, or not mitigate, but
leave them more susceptible.
They were more susceptible to the virus. So I was young, I was healthy. I wasn't going to bring the virus home to anybody. So Father had me there. So I actually never missed Mass.
Okay.
Because in the state of Michigan, we were allowed 10 people at Mass. Okay. So as a staff member, I was there, but I had to do all the roles, liturgical roles for Father. And but where it hit me was when my mom said, in 72 years I never missed Triduum. In 72 years I never missed going to Mass on Easter Sunday. And that was where it kind of hit. But one of the things that I did notice was a lot of people stepped away from volunteering in these liturgical roles because of the risk. They just figured it was not worth the risk, or it was their time to move on, into other areas of ministry, or just kind of retire in a sense.
Fascinating.
So I could basically, and then we were, whatever was seemed to be the next step we took, as opposed to like really looking. So now we can look back in hindsight and say, these are the things that we should have done. These are the things we shouldn't have done. I know I've talked to several people, several bishops who said, yeah, probably the general, what is the dispensation from attending Mass?
Sure.
Maybe we won't do that again. Maybe it's individuals need to come forward and say, and we give a individual dispensation as opposed to a general. But again, at the time, we just didn't know. Yeah. We hadn't had a pandemic like this for 100 years. So. But when it came to one of the things that I'm kind of the goal for communion ministry is people of God should have an experience of both species, the body and blood. And there are a lot of parishes in our diocese that don't offer the cup.
Sure.
Either because they're still afraid of the repercussions. I think a lot of more is we don't have the volunteers. to be able to distribute
Yeah.
both. So I want to encourage parishes to look at and discern what would be best for them. I know one of the things we did in the parish that I was at was, okay, we used to have 4 stations, 4 cups. Maybe we just go down to 2.
Okay.
And, just discern how does that work in the parish and are people willing to receive? Another thing too is what I'm noticing, I think for somebody's first Holy Communion, that they should have the opportunity for both.
Okay.
So these are some of the the practices that we want to encourage for the sake of, especially, for the person receiving their first. And we're not just talking about children.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of adults coming into the church and a lot of adults receiving First Holy Communion that they have an experience of both species.
Yep.
So, so those are some of the things, and then just a continuity and a consistency in the practice as to how volunteers in the parish are distributing communion, just for sanitary reasons, for devotion to the Eucharist, and protecting, safeguarding the sacrament, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So
second thing I want to thank you for, if you were in the interior of the church and kind of looking at it from the inside, there were these moments where you're like, oh gosh, people are really wrestling with these ministries for the first time, if they want to do them, why they're doing them. All these, a lot of knowledge to be gained there. This idea, so you have requirements on the first page, qualifications, sorry. An EMHC must be a fully initiated Catholic, baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist. 16 years old, practicing Catholic in good standing, registered in the parish they're going to be serving, demonstrate reverence and understanding the Eucharist, live a life consistent with church teaching, proper training, and maintaining a prayerful life and approach to the ministry. That first one, though, and you said it already, this idea of what arises out of our baptismal graces. So we clearly know only priests can confect the Holy Eucharist. But we're priests, right? We are.
We have is it the munus of the gift of priesthood?
That's right, and not the ministry, not
the ordo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have get into that one. Ministry and office are a whole other thing. But no, exactly. Yeah, it's like what arises, what specific capabilities within the liturgy can only arise out of orders. But then there's a ton. We are baptized priests, prophet, and kings in Jesus Christ. So what arises out of this? How does EMHC kind of function as a fruit of our baptism? If you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So the church, what she directs when it comes to extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion is when there is a need and the priest can't supply the need. In a sense, what the church is asking us to look at is when are we co-workers in the ministry of the priest?
Okay.
And I think that's the one that's most visible, because it's the one that we see at Mass, is laity helping with the distribution of communion. But we also have to remember that it's not just the distribution at Mass. It's the other ways in which a parish practices or exercises, would be the better word, of communion ministry. And communion ministry goes to Eucharistic adoration. It speaks to visiting the sick and the homebound, the incarcerated. So a priest can't be everywhere at all times.
That's right.
And with the reduction of the number of priests in ministry, he's going to have to depend on the laity to be able to exercise this function. So, for example, priest is not needed for Eucharistic adoration. Lay people can participate in Eucharistic adoration, which I feel like, in my experience, is a priority that parishes should put on in their ministry. It's one of those things where we can exercise it pretty well and pretty faithfully, and the return on investment is abundant in the grace. When a parish commits to Eucharistic adoration regularly, exposition, but you definitely need lay people to help out with that, because the priest can't sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament for hours a day. There's only one John Vianney, one parish priest ever canonized the saints. So, but then visiting the sick. And what I find really interesting in my experience was many people start because of what they see, which is distributing communion at Mass. But then because they're known for that ministry, because they've been seen in that ministry, they then get called upon to go visit the sick. It usually starts with their own family member who can't make it to Mass. Father, I'm a communion minister. Can I take communion to mom who's at home sick, or dad, or, and so there's some training, there's some knowledge that needs to occur as to what's the proper way in which we conduct that ministry. And then, of course, the people that we don't see regularly, which is the homebound, incarcerated, again, relying on the laity to be able to reach those people with the Blessed Sacrament.
When it's done well, to speak to, especially adoration, also communion ministry. My parish down in Melbourne, my wife and I are from, they instituted somewhere in my teenage years after the Eucharistic, after the Holy Communion was reposed, after communion was distributed, and we had the final prayer afterward. Father would call up all the communion ministers, usually 2 or 3, and they come up with their pyxes. Is that pyxes. They come up, and some of them would have like the proper necklace with like the leather.
The burse. It's called the burse.
The burse.
We carry Jesus on our hearts, not in our purses.
Yeah, and it was just this beautiful moment where, like, you see these people that you were in the pew with, and they go up, and there's only 5 or 6 of them, maybe 2 of them sometimes. They, bow their heads. Father prays a blessing, gives them the pyx. They put it in there, and you see the Lord leaving to go reach these people, which is just a very powerful image.
I actually had a volunteer who refused to leave Mass early, but when done correctly, the people who take communion to the sick should be taken from the Mass.
Yeah.
And she refused to leave.
Before it's over.
Yeah. She refused to leave Mass. She goes, I don't leave Mass early. But I said, you are an extension of the Mass.
Yeah.
And she was visiting her mother. I said, you are an extension of the Mass to your mother. So you're not leaving Mass because you have Christ with you. And it goes back to these, to the ancient custom, back when, the church in Rome grew to be big enough to be beyond one household, that the bishop would send, basically presbyters to the other communities that have gathered and taken a host from his Mass to be distributed at these other, other communities as a connection of the larger church. I would love the image of when we bring communion to others, we are bringing them or keeping them in communion with the church.
Yeah.
So
there's a little bit of that. That's such I don't know if you can fill that point in a little bit, but the experience, we very rarely go to Mass with the bishop when he comes for confirmation or something like that. Our parish, we're used to like, who does Mass? Priests do Mass. The bishop does somewhere. But in the ancient church, we really this is an experience of the bishop at the very beginning was the one person you would normally see celebrate Mass, and even you take the bishop's liturgical life to the rest of the parish churches. That's kind of the history of the development. There's some nuance there, I'm assuming.
Now, if I can share something, because I talked about the importance of language, and you made a comment about the reception of communion. But when it comes to Eucharistic ministry, the Eucharist, what we need to prioritize is the sacrifice. Okay. And so there was a movement in when children received communion for the first time, some parishes moved to calling it First Eucharist.
Okay.
And as I was diving into the documents a little bit more, I looked at it and I said, no, we should be saying it's their first Holy Communion.
That's right.
Again, language being so important here, that because a child prior to the age of reason is participating in the Eucharist 100%. When they're attending Mass, when they're in adoration. So it's not their first Eucharist, but it's their first Holy Communion when they actually receive. And here's the other thing that in the documents that I prioritized and really wanted to parse out is we tend to, whenever there is a Mass and the priest is not available, we replace it with a communion service.
Okay.
And I really want to be careful with that, especially when the neighboring parish has Mass going on at the same time. Because the priority is not the reception of Holy Communion, it's the offering of the sacrifice of the Mass. And this has, you think, well, why is this important? It has some ripple effects, because if we prioritize the reception of Holy Communion, and there are people who know they can't receive because they're not in a state of grace, or they're not disposed because of, say, a marital status, or they're still expected to be at Mass. And so part of the guidelines was to address that we need to prioritize the offering of the sacrifice and then the reception of Holy Communion. And so the language reflects that. And it's just these little nuances that I think bring us into greater understanding of Eucharistic theology, what God is accomplishing in the Eucharist for the benefit, the salvation of humanity. And so when we take a look at these nuances, we then reflect it, we implement it, and then we have a greater understanding of the Eucharist. Because what was the thing that shocked us a couple years ago?
Yeah.
A third to 2/3 of Catholics not believing this is the body and blood of Christ, the true presence. Yeah. There's a little bit of question about, or hesitancy with the methodology of the questions, but still a third to 2/3 is a lot of Catholics who are not believing in this great gift of the church.
Yeah. It's such an important point. This, I've been to communion services, and it does, obviously there are places where throughout the world there are not enough priests to minister, and you don't, we have learned a lot of lessons from our history, and I love the medieval period more than anything else in the whole world, and I love all the saints came out of it. But there was a little bit of a drift to where it was seen for the average Catholic as, we had to require that you receive communion once a year. Which,
Easter duty.
When you hear this, you're like, wait, what? You weren't receiving communion? You had to be told to do it? And there was such a distance in some people's minds from that. It's such a holy reality. And I can't possibly approach it unless I'm in the absolute most perfect state of grace. And then there was a little bit of a boomerang where you could see Mass is about me receiving Holy Communion.
Right. Yeah.
The only way, if I'm not receiving Holy Communion because of X, Y, Z, what's the point of going to Mass? And it's like for the medieval, it's like, well, I go to Mass every Sunday, sometimes as much as I can, and I never receive Holy Communion, statistically speaking, but I'm still fully participating there. There's some happy marrying of those two where, yes, Holy Communion is like the summit moment where we receive the Lord, body, blood, soul, and divinity in our very being. But if that can't happen, I still unite my prayer, my sacrifice with what's happening at the altar. I'm still a participant in this reality. And that does a world of good for people's mentality of how they relate to the Lord in prayer and in service and all these things. It's not just about, when I think of my son, my little boy, Gabriel, who's 4 years old now, and he talks usually he's with my wife after communion, and he goes, "Did you get your cookie, Mama?" And it's like, it's hilarious, it's sweet, but some people, you can treat it like that. It's like, did you go get your thing? Did you go to Mass? Did you get your token of participation? You received the, as he calls it, the Jesus cookie. And it's like, yes, bud, but it's a lot more than that,
Well, and let's talk about just what's going on in the liturgy, in the Mass. Christ is offering himself eternally to the Father.
Yes.
One way that one of the priests, professors that taught it to us, he said, if Jesus was able to mount up on the cross again, and he's basically saying, if I could die for you once again, I would. Yeah. But he can't. He's the eternal Son of the Father who is resurrected from the dead. He can't die no more. And what the priest then went on to say is that Jesus who appears elevated in the host, the priest holds up at Mass, is the same Jesus that appeared to Thomas.
That's right.
In the upper room and said, Thomas, do you believe? And he goes, not until I put my, hands in his side and fingers in his nail holes. But that's the same Jesus, and that offering is what we're going to spend eternity for. I hate to say it this way, but if you are bored at Mass, you are going to be bored for all eternity.
That's right.
Because that's what we're going to be doing, now, can we celebrate the liturgy better here?
Sure.
Of course, we're human. We have limitations, but we can always do things better. But that is ultimate. That's our ultimate destination.
Truly, though, like everybody in this building, everybody in the pastoral center, everybody in your parish, from the front desk person to the staff accountant to the building construction person to the janitor, everyone is we're all working for. As Amazing Parish would say it, the Sunday experience. Yep. We are all working toward there being the place that Bishop said this in his Catholic Sharing Appeal video. That we come into places that are clean, that are orderly, that are safe, so that you can focus on the Lord as he is elevated by a priest or by the bishop, because that's what it's all about. Today we're recording on the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul. Our neighbor to the west, Archbishop Mark Rivatuso, got the pallium, and you see these moments where it's all about us gathering to a point and receiving the Lord in the Eucharist. That's what the whole ministry is for.
Well, and it's funny because when you think of the celebrations that we have in life, even the idea of pilgrimage and holy sites, what is the thing that we celebrate it around?
Yep.
The Eucharist.
Yep.
We celebrate confirmation at a mass. Yep. We celebrate typically weddings, or at least the primordial, the preferred is to have the wedding at the celebration of the Eucharist. I worked for a priest who said the Sunday Mass is the heartbeat of the parish. Yep. And if you attend that Mass, you can get a pulse of what the rest of the parish is based on their Sunday experience, their Sunday Mass. So even holy sites, I remember when I went to go visit the Holy Land, my mom asking me, well, why would they not keep that site, and turn it into a museum? Why all these chapels? Why shrines? And it was explained to us because the point of visiting that site is to have an encounter with Christ. And what is our closest encounter with Christ than in the Eucharist? Yep. So, it's the gift that God gave us. It's the gift that Jesus continues to give us. Yep. So let's do it to the best of our ability. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, we can't go any stronger than the Church says this is the source and summit of our faith. These two. We could have left one, just the source of our faith, and left summit, maybe something else. Summit could be that and made the source. No, it's the source and the summit. And
it's interesting because, and I think this was inspired also by the amazing parish people, that everything should lead to the Sunday Eucharist. And so whatever we're doing in the parish ministry-wise should be leading people back to gathering on that on Sunday for the Mass. And I would even say, I think there's something to say about. No, I'm not going to go. I was going to say, should parishes only have one Sunday Mass?
Well, we've had this. That was the standard, and it's logistically impossible. Right. But it does symbolize a proper sense of what we mean. In the end, we are all leading towards that one banquet. There will not be multiple Mass times in heaven. There will be one eternal banquet around one altar with one high priest. Until then, we're logistically bound by time and space. But no, it is and this, if you definitely have a social services kind of I identify with the corporal works of mercy, and that's what it's all. It is, and every moment we reach out to touch Christ's suffering body and the poor and the sick and the suffering is absolutely also why we work here too. We also hope they come. We want to bring them in and experience ultimately not just physical healing and support and stuff like that. We want them in church, more than anything. Okay. Well, that was I just a couple things here. Anything that you definitely, man, if you were in front of a group of Eucharistic ministers right now, and you were like, don't miss this, don't miss that, or what your approach should be.
Well, one of the things is I did create, film, and online training.
That's right.
And this is now for all Eucharistic ministry. So the training incorporates distribution at Mass, but also what to do when you're visiting the sick or homebound. The importance of Eucharistic adoration and what are we allowed to do? What can we do? And then the other thing is we really didn't have any guidelines as to what happens when a priest doesn't show up for a Sunday Mass. Yeah. And we have we're trying to fulfill our obligation, and the priest doesn't show. So a little bit of training there. So that online training, very comprehensive, giving a little bit of the theology behind the things that we experience in communion ministry, but then again, a consistency, having the same message throughout. The other thing too is, so the online training is going to be mandatory, but then I thought as a way to really support the implementation of these guidelines, in the fall, we're going to have retreats for liturgical ministers. Yes. So this is going to be for everybody who volunteers, works for sacristans, ushers and greeters, music ministry, altar servers, extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, and readers, to just be renewed in the why. What's the to ultimately be renewed in our relationship with Christ, because it's very easy to get to this is where I stand, this is how I hold the cup, this is what I do, but to really understand the mind and heart of the church when it comes to what is she trying to offer when she offers the body and blood of Jesus to us, in communion. So to get a renewed, so this is the retreats are not mandatory, but they are encouraged, and it's to get a renewal in our devotion to the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament.
So needed.
Yes.
It's going to be great. It's going to be cool. I mean, you meet people in your parish or across the diocese you didn't know were in the same role as you, and get a sense for that. Okay, well, we've got the online course. We can go to ptdiocese.org/liturgy, where you can find the guidelines. You'll be able to find the course. It's linked there. It's on another platform, but it's linked out there. And then also on ptdiocese.org/events are all of our liturgical ministers retreats. So those are coming up September, October, November, I believe. I think
it's September and October. We finalize the dates and
across the diocese. One per deanery. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and we're going to be, gathering in different parishes. We're going to be in the social halls to have a little bit even relaxed experience. Still putting all the pieces together, but open up to any volunteer, any employee who's in communion ministry. Any minors that come need to be accompanied by a parent.
Gotcha.
So, because we know we have altar servers, or we have communion ministers or readers who they need to be accompanied by a parent.
That's right, because we are allowed, according to the guidelines, you have to be at least 16, but not 18 necessarily to be an extraordinary minister.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But the retreat is for altar servers.
Yeah,
and we know
exactly.
we have children who are in altar serving. Yep.
Well, cool. Well, this is fun. I there, like I said, all throughout this podcast, this touches so many people. Even if you've ever had a question, I know I've talked to family members where they're just like, the imprecision in their language, in the sense of why is that person up there distributing Holy Communion, and why isn't the priest doing everything, and all these kinds of things. It's very good to avail yourselves of these answers.
And it's one of those things. It's not even, we're not trying to do clericalism where the priest is better than people. It's what is appropriate for the priest. What does the church say is because, and then what can we do as a result of our baptismal grace? And then just a very best practice in how do we maintain that reverence? How do we maintain the sacredness of Christ's body and blood in our practice?
Indeed.
And we all can be renewed in that.
Heck yeah. Dr. Gawel, thanks, man.
Thank you for
down
having
in the
me.
hallway. Nice and easy to just enjoy our studio together. Yep. Guys, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Finally, we've got Father Tim Halita coming on our podcast to discuss his pastoring the Co-Cathedral of St. Thomas More, so we'll see you then.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumetspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.